Hey everyone, welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle. I'm an intuitive counselor, energy healer, channeler, and astrologer. And today I'm doing an energy update on the Aquarius full moon, which is happening on July 29th at 4:35 a.m. Hawaii time. So you can convert that to your own time zone, depending on where you are located. And this full moon is quite the full moon. There is so much going on to unpack around this full moon. There are so many things that signify this being a very significant historical shift, reset, change, activation that's happening collectively. And of course, can affect you personally depending on your personal placements. So, if you do have personal placements like your sun, moon, rising, Mercury, Venus, Mars, those are the innermost planets that affect you more personally. If you have those placements within 0 to 10 degrees, you're going to be affected more personally by this full moon. So let's get into some of the things going on, some of the things we need to unpack around this full moon in Aquarius. I want to start off first with just where we're at now, leading up to the full moon. The first order of business that I want to talk about is that Mercury stationed direct on July 23rd, and it will still be in its shadow period until August 6th. Mercury turning direct means that we're moving forward on matters of communication, contracts, transit, and these topics of home and family. Things might be progressing forward instead of kind of going back into the past. We are also in Leo season. Now, Leo season brings about themes about your inherent gifts and talents, where you can shine your light. How bright can you shine your light? Leo can often be associated with performance and showmanship and attracting attention or visibility. You can think of like a performer on the stage, someone that's really talented, like a singer, an actress, a dancer, someone that has beautiful talent that gets to share it with others. Leo is very known for being like that lion energy. It can be a strong leadership energy. It can be courageous. It can be enthusiastic, but it's also there's something stable about Leo. It is a fixed sign. So it can be loyal and romantic and stable, and it's maintaining an energy. And Leo can be more of a heart-based communicator, speaking from the heart, sharing from the heart, your own authentic individuality. And it can also bring up themes around your inner child and the way you express and your creativity and just your overall ability to be more light, playful, and joyful. And so there's a lot of beautiful themes that can come about with Leo. Sometimes you might be working with your inner child during Leo season. Sometimes you might be lightening up and, you know, getting brighter, energetically brighter. You might be going through, processes of growth and expansion that would have you actually shine brighter, releasing those restrictions and those limits around just how bright you can be, just how much attention you can get, just how much visibility you can have, how well you can be seen in your own gifts and talents, how you show up as a leader. These are all themes that can come out. Fears around being seen, fears around visibility, fears around leadership. And, during this season, you can become more aware of your own specialness, how original and special you are, and how that is something that is worth sharing with others, worth being seen. It is a fire sign, which means that this energy is expressed more outwards and it's more active. So in Leo season, we might be aware more of our external world. It's more of a masculine expression. We might be, really able to take action and take consistent and stable action. Now, the other thing I want to mention that's happening right now is we've got nodal shifts occurring right now, which doesn't happen every day and it doesn't happen every year. And so this is a shift that is occurring in the collective right now. That is new, and it is like having a vibe shift, like the vibe is changing in the collective. The nodes of fate were in uh, Pisces and Virgo for about a year and a half. Usually the nodes are transiting the signs for about a year and a half. And so we just had a nodal shift where the nodes are shifting from Virgo and Pisces to Leo and Aquarius, with the south node being in Leo and the north node being in Aquarius. So I know some of you are asking me right now, like, what are the nodes? What does it mean? I'm going to get to that. The nodes of fate are like karmic points in our charts, and they show us areas that we, for example, like the South Node in Leo, the South Node will reveal to us where we have a lot of experience, where we have some karma, where we have gifts and talents that we have really developed. We have a lot of wisdom around that are meant to be used for a higher purpose. The South Node can also act like a psychic trash can. For example, if the South Node is transiting and it's starting to conjunct or make an aspect to one of your personal placements, you might actually feel tired and fatigued as you release like old psychic energetic debris that is no longer coming with you. So the South Node can show us where we're more comfortable and where we have more experience. And then we have the North Node. The North Node's also a karmic point, but it's showing us the direction that we need to go in to create more balance, but also where we have new developments occurring. And so oftentimes this represents newness, like new developments, new events, new turning points. It's also a karmic point, so this can bring about karmic developments and karmic kind of events, but it can also bring up fated and destined events as well. And so when you think about fate, I'm just going to give you my perspective on, the spiritual perspective on fate. Before you come into this lifetime, you kind of create an intention for this lifetime. Like, this is the karma I have to clear. This is the purpose. This is what I need to experience. This is what I need to do to overall heal and rebalance. This is what I need to evolve and transform. This is what I need to change. And the North Node can point towards events that we put into place before we came into this lifetime, like preceded events that we need to go through because they help develop our character, they help release or build an identity, they help us have necessary turning points in our life so that we have to have certain experiences, so that we have to grow a certain way, or so that we have to develop a certain way, or so that we have to let go of certain things and start certain things. And so these fated events are something that we preceded before we came into this life to kind of help align us with our soul's experience, to keep us on track, to help with our own alignment here, because most of us that get incarnated on the planet, forget. We forget our past, we forget why we're here, and these fated karmic events can act like like spiritual soul level chiropractic adjustments. Like, if you're not supposed to be somewhere, like something outside of your control that you must surrender to might happen so that you can no longer stay there. If you're meant to have a fated connection with someone, a fated partnership, a relationship that's important for your life in some way, like that will come in. And then we have destiny, which I see as something different. A destiny is more like, when you fulfill your gifts and talents, when you embody and fulfill, higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of gifts and talents and expression of gifts and talents, then you open up more potentials in your life, more potentials, higher potentials, things that didn't exist before that can lead to higher levels of fulfillment. And so the South Node and the North Node have just shifted into Leo before this full moon, but the South Node will be, and the North Node and the South Node will be at a critical degree in these new signs. First of all, I want to talk about this theme that's going to be arising for us collectively and personally with the South Node and the North Node in Leo and Aquarius. Okay. Some of the themes that we'll notice is the theme of creating through inspiration. Like that's very Leo. We might have a lot of experience around creating from an inspired place, creating from our hearts, creating from our gifts and talents. And then we have Aquarius, which is more about taking something that's like a structure that currently exists and innovating it. Like more possibilities of what we can do with current systems and structures in our lives. Change it up, right? And so it's kind of like a balance between creating from an inspiration and innovating something that currently exists into something new. Leo tends to express its energy in a more warm-hearted, kind of sunny-like way. You can think of Leo as ruled by the sun. You can think of the qualities of the sun. It's warming, and just like when you go out in a sunny day and you feel the warm breeze, it's relaxing, it's warming, it's inviting. Same with a Leo and that Leoan energy. It feels warming, right? There's heart that's there. And Aquarius energy can be more detached, objective, even scientific, and just unique. And so we have that balance between warmth, heart, speaking from the heart, authentic expression, individuality with objectivity, science, perspective, possibility, innovation, collective, groups, humanity. And so when we're looking at this axis, we really start to bring up themes around leadership, authority figures, and collective humanity, groups of people, as well as our ability to be seen, our visibility, and equality, fairness, where we all get treated the same. Leo can be more about recognition, whereas Aquarius can be more about contribution. Leo can be more about the heart, whereas Aquarius can be more about the mind. And so when we have the nodes here, we have collective themes where this is the tension that is occurring within the collective. And with the South Node in Leo, we're essentially using this warm-hearted, individual self-expression, gifts and talents, shining our light, creating with inspiration, recognition, leadership, authority, like all of that is needing to be used in a higher way with the South Node going through Leo. We have to use this energy in a wise way, in a higher level way, and we will be releasing old layers of this Leo energy that aren't working for us, like kind of like the shadow side of Leo, like egotistical, performative, fake, glitter, wanting attention for the sake of validation, um, showmanship that is, you know, manipulative or narcissistic. Like these are some of the qualities that are going to go into the psychic trash can. And all of us will be activated throughout the next year and a half around these qualities and releasing them and coming into higher states and higher expressions of this Leo energy as we move in a new direction in the collective. there are going to be new developments in the collective, within humanity, within groups of people that are about innovation and possibly technology or science, and even like, systems like government, like, is it fair? Are we all getting our needs met? How do we innovate current structures into something new that helps everyone, that serves everyone, that is fair for everyone? These are going to be themes that arise over the next year and a half. Now, with that said, during this full moon, we start to get this critical degree here. This is a critical degree, the 29th degree. It's an anaretic degree, and it represents karmic completion. So this full moon already is about something completing, and it's karmic, which means it has past implications from the past. And oftentimes at the 29th degree, it's a late degree in the zodiac sign. So we have gone, with the 29th degree, it's showing like, what have we not integrated yet within these themes of Leo and Aquarius? What are some of the things that we need to release karmically? This can be a volatile degree in that we're unanchoring from one energy and we are anchoring into a new energy. And so this can be like a bit of a destabilizing energy or volatile energy. It's not very grounded, and we become very clear about what we haven't integrated. So, for example, with this Leo energy and this Aquarius energy, this might be pointing towards something individually, like, okay, you may have gifts and talents, but can those gifts and talents be shared in a way that serves something larger than yourself, that can serve the collective, that everyone can benefit from? And can you release whatever you need to release that's getting in your way of doing that? Okay, what kind of lessons have you not completed yet? What kind of wisdom have you not integrated yet? Where are you still seeking outside validation from others and depending on that? Where are you lacking confidence? Where is your self-expression damaged or wounded, that you need to release? Like, where are you not connected to your heart, speaking from the heart? Where are you, more cold or dry, like this is stuff, these are different themes that could be coming up. And, for you, it's going to be unique. I'm just kind of throwing out themes of stuff that could be coming up to the surface that's ready to release. That's kind of pivotal around how you deliver your gifts and talents to the world and for a greater purpose than yourself. I want to talk about this historical configuration called Barbeau's basket. Now, I know a lot of astrologers are talking about Barbeau's basket, and so some of you may be sick of hearing about this, but I'm going to talk about it anyways for those of you that haven't heard about it or don't know what I'm talking about, so that we can all be on the same page. There's a French astrologer named André Barbeau. He is not currently alive. He died in 2019, but he studied long-term planetary cycles and believed that these certain planetary alignments corresponded with major collective shifts throughout history. And he specifically pointed towards this basket configuration that's happening now in July 2026 and interpreted that as a period of time where major societal shifts were going through a transformation or restructuring or shift in collective consciousness. And so on July 20th, so before this full moon, we had an exact configuration of these outer planets, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto, all forming a rare configuration around 4 degrees, which is creating this complex pattern of interconnected aspects that look like a basket. Some people are creating new names for this, like it kind of looks like a womb or a basket or a cradle or like a cauldron, but something's kind of inside developing, that's creating shifts and changes and alchemy and transformation that will be expressed externally. These outer planets here, they all represent, collective themes. So for example, like Pluto can represent our soul's evolution, power, and control. It can represent evolution, transformation, death and rebirth, crisis, kind of like the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. And we have Pluto in Aquarius. So this is bringing up collective themes of transformation, humanity itself going through a transformation, groups of people encountering crisis, power struggles, um, instinctual, deeper, subconscious patterns that need to be alchemized and evolved from, primal instincts that need to be um, composted into fertile soil for a rebirth. So we have the collective going through the rebirth. Now, Pluto at 4 degrees, this is early in the zodiac sign, meaning that we still haven't really gone through all the lessons that we need to go through in this energy as a collective. But 4 degrees, in numerology can represent foundations. And so we see all these outer planets here at 4 degrees. On July 20th, Jupiter formed at 20 degrees, formed this configuration at 4 degrees. So they were all at 44 degrees. So something that stands out to me immediately is that the foundation of society, the foundation of the collective is going through some major developments, of course. Now, Pluto being in the sign of Aquarius has brought up themes with AI, technology, probably developments in science, our systems, like our governmental systems, the environment, things like that, that affect all of us. We're seeing a crisis. We're seeing fascism. We are seeing a crisis of power systems on the planet. We are seeing things of hidden information being exposed, secrets being exposed, and this is all impacting a very intense psychological and emotional and energetic transformation that's occurring in the collective. Now, we also have Uranus here at 4 degrees in Gemini. Now, Uranus represents the higher mind, like a higher intelligence. I like to think about that as the higher intelligence that brings about liberation, and it breaks patterns, it disrupts and breaks patterns, it brings change, it brings awakenings. It can bring about Kundalini activations, nervous system activations. And having this planet in Gemini can bring about themes around our communication, our media, independent journalism, transit, how we get around, cars, planes, local communities, sales, marketing, all of that going through changes, differing perspectives, debating, competition of perspectives, listening to each other, learning something from each other. This is all these themes that happen with Uranus in Gemini. And it's forming this trine here with Pluto. Now, Uranus can represent themes of technology as well, even science and metaphysics. And so with this trine with Pluto, that's representing a very fast and harmonious flow of energy between these two planets. And so a part of this transformation that is occurring in the collective has to do with technology, has to do with science, has to do with communication, differing perspectives, debates, um, what we listen to, what we don't listen to, what we try to understand how we communicate, how we get around our infrastructure, probably around transit and communication, all of that going through new transformation, death and rebirth experiences, exciting changes, exciting developments, awakening developments that create awakenings. This is kind of where we might see collective awakenings, like Kundalini activations that are happening collectively. And then we have Neptune here at 4 degrees. Neptune, the planet of dreams, imaginations. It's very creative energy. It's spiritually awakening. It also can bring about confusion, delusion, illusions. It can be kind of foggy at times. This planet is in Aries, a planet that is a sign, Aries, that is pioneering, that is brave, courageous, pioneers into new territory. Um, can be about our identity, our sense of self, our desires, what we want to manifest and materialize, our willingness to be brave and move through our fears, move through any obstacles that we need to move through so that we can get what we want. And having Neptune in Aries tells us that collectively, energetically, we're idealizing entrepreneurship, independence, bravery, courage, young men that are brave, um, spiritual awakening around pioneering something. It can bring up themes, Aries can bring up themes of weapons and military and war. And so this is where we might see themes of spiritual warfare, whether it's actual just energetic, like psychic attack, spiritual warfare, like magic and, things that happen more astrally, but also, spiritual wars that are occurring on the planet, like driven by ideologies, like even if those ideologies are racist or homophobic or, you know, um, delusional in some way, people getting into war for spiritual purposes, right? And then we have Jupiter here, the planet of expansion and growth and abundance, and even like our wisdom and spirituality and um, having a broader perspective. Jupiter is a very experiential planet. It can bring blessings and gifts and more sweetness and overindulgence sometimes. So we have this trine here between and Jupiter, Neptune and Jupiter, Aries and Leo. And clearly there's going to be an expansion of leadership. We might actually see an expansion of leadership that is more wise, brave, courageous, and new. We might see themes of young men rising up. We might see divine masculine energy starting to expand and rise. I just got chills down my spine when I said that. Um, there's definitely a spiritual component or an energetic component to this transformation that is occurring in the collective. We're dissolving, you know, old, old ideals and old patterns around leadership. Um, it's kind of like the astral plane, dissolving things around our masculine energy so that we can actually have an expansion in our masculine energy. And this is a part of the transformation that I see occurring. We could be really expanding and growing into some new spiritual gifts. Our intuition could be expanding. Inherent spiritual gifts are coming online and being activated. Um, Gifts and talents, creative gifts and talents could definitely be surfacing. There could be more of a renaissance, an expansion around creativity and art and, performance. art, art that expresses our ideals and our overall vision. This is all tied together too, because each of these configurations have these sextiles to each other, which means this is something, gifts and talents, innovations, products, things are being developed in the collective and they're developing and they're new and it's change and it's technology and it's our ideals, it's our imagination, it's our creatorship, it's our envisioning, and it's something that's expanding, right? So there's a lot of themes that can show up with just within this configuration. It's not just black and white. Collectively, we can definitely see themes around money and the economy with this Jupiter opposition to Pluto. Um, and we're definitely seeing themes of technology, rebellion, revolution, where the collective needs to really show up and have a reckoning with power and leadership and corruption. And, we're seeing all these themes, but this particular configuration has been predicted as a turning point, of more positive changes in society after a period of time of crisis and hardship. And so we'll all be going through this together. This is so historical that astrologers that have done thorough research on these configurations in history really have not found anything totally like this. And so this is something new that we're all experiencing together on the planet, which is amazing. Okay, and so coming back to this full moon. We have the full moon in Aquarius at 6 degrees, and it's going to be, I mean, this full moon has a lot going on. It has a lot going on. This is probably one of the most historical and activating full moons of the year. No, I would say the eclipse is coming up in August. Could be quite a lot too, but this is definitely uh, a full moon that deserves to be pointed out for the year of 2026. Um, so this full moon, remember, a full moon is like a culmination. It's like it can be an ending, a completion, a turning point. Things that were hidden could be illuminated. Um, the energy gets really loud around a full moon. And the energy of an ending is very emphasized in this full moon simply because the nodes are at the 29th degree of a karmic completion. We have a full moon, which can represent an ending anyways, and then it's conjunct Pluto, which is the planet of death and rebirth. And so something could definitely be ending around this time, or purging around this time. And then we have it in an opposition with Jupiter, which is conjunct the sun, which is called a cazimi, where a planet is in the heart of the sun and it gets cleansed by the sun. It magnifies its strengths more than it typically would. And so not only is this full moon like a reset, an energetic reset, maybe a reset around our purpose, a reset around our focus, a reset around our identity. It is also an ending or a completion or a deeper release that is occurring. And it can bring about fast change. The full moon in Aquarius typically feels less emotional, because Aquarius is an inherently intellectual sign and can be more detached, mental, holding more perspective, objective. And so even though we've got a full moon and a full moon can be relatively emotional for more for most full moons, this moon may not actually be super emotional because it's just simply because it's in Aquarius. So we might be getting like a very objective perspective on something, more of a detached perspective. We might have an overview of something, but having it conjunct Pluto here This is going to be a soul moment for us, on a personal level. It's also going to be a collective moment, in humanity, like a collective activation that's happening. But for us personally, we are having a soul experience around this time. And there could absolutely be deeper purges happening on emotional and psychological levels, definitely energetic levels. It is in a sextile with Neptune, and Neptune is retrograde, which means it's more internal, and there could be, beneficial, energetic things that are just dissolving and breaking down. Um, Collectively speaking, this could be like a tower moment, this could be like a moment where something is dissolving. Like there is an old system, an old structure that is ending or dissolving or showing signs of, weakness, or, something could be, decomposing. And then we have this square here with Chiron. Chiron just moved into Taurus. It will retrograde and go back into Aries, but we're getting the first, taste of Chiron in Taurus. And this can bring up themes of our self-worth, having chronic problems and trauma and issues of being devalued and lacking self-worth, and even themes around our own financial security, our foundations, what we're growing and building, and even our resources, like our natural resources, like water, earth, air, wood, like food, things like that. And it can bring up even, wounds around our own creativity and fertility. That can be also associated with Taurus as well. Taurus is a very creative sign. And so when we have a square here with Chiron, Pluto and Aquarius, with Chiron and Taurus, this is collective healing going on. This is generational. Like we're all dealing with the same chronic issues, the same chronic problems. You could say right here, this is showing us that humanity is being devalued. Humanity is in a challenging healing process with a chronic issue of being devalued. Groups of people are being devalued. There is a massive amount of people with chronic issues around financial security. We are seeing collective global issues with resources, with pollution, with water, with, environmental, natural disasters, increasing crisis in chemicals and food and production of food, and areas and regions that used to be fertile becoming dry, and um, the loss of nature and fertility. Like this is that energy. But for us personally, this could be bringing up something to the surface, or that is like old trauma around your self-worth and your resources or your financial security. Something about finances could be illuminated here simply because Jupiter and Pluto can bring up themes about money and the economy. And so this full moon could bring about some themes around money, the economy, the way money is being spent, corruption, and the difficult healing process that we're all going through around this. The chronic issue that we're all like trying to evolve out of, right? And then this full moon is going to be in a trine with Uranus. And I've talked about this energy, anything from revolution, rebellion, change. But I'll tell you what's showing up about this full moon here is you are having an internal revolution. Sometimes we hold energies within us, like foreign energies within us, that act as authority and rules, internal authority figures, internalized, restrictions, internalized systems that create restrictions and rules and, old systems like internalized patriarchy, for example. This trine with Uranus is like, this full moon is going to liberate us in a good way. Like, if there are restrictions, if there are things that are suppressing us, if there is stuff in our energy field around communication, self-expression, um, how you create your dreams that is holding you back, foreign energy that's not yours, like this full moon is liberating in that way. Fast. There could be fast changes, fast things dissolving, fast endings, fast ascensions. With this trine here, this can definitely be like a shift in consciousness that's occurring collectively, where we have fast purging, fast healing going on, fast dissolving process externally that could look like systems that are dissolving in front of us, changing in front of us. If there's something in the collective that we haven't seen before, like hidden power games, secrets, things that are hidden, this full moon can be very exposing. It can be very exposing for you personally as well as collectively. Okay, but overall, this is for us personally, especially this community, a realization hub where we're all going through spiritual transformation and navigating energy, intense energetic dynamics within us. This full moon can be very liberating. It can be like an internal revolution that is that is helping you heal, helping you fix chronic issues around your self-worth, your financial security, what you're building and growing in your life, what you're dreaming of, what you're trying to manifest. This could definitely be a very beneficial reset, that helps you expand and grow in a good way, in a positive way. And so you might notice more opportunities, benefits happening around this time. So let's get down to Jupiter here. Jupiter is going to be in a direct opposition with this full moon. So Jupiter just expands everything. It makes things very obvious. So something around this full moon is going to be very obvious, very maybe even extreme. Um, it could be, also it could bring about more positivity around, this full moon. This could be something, an event that occurs that is a karmic ending or some kind of release or some kind of exposure that you see, bringing about good news or good celebration or like big events that, create a shift in consciousness or a change in vision about, our lives or what's happening on Earth. Jupiter, the planet of abundance and blessings and opportunities and expansion and growth, and even our spirituality and our wisdom will be in a conjunction with the sun opposing the full moon. And so these themes are going to be going through a reset. It just kind of reminds me of like before and after, leading up to the full moon. And then there's after this full moon. And it's like you can't go back. We can't go back. Something has changed. Something has completed. Something has purged. And it's ultimately leading to collective expansion, wise leadership, greater self-expression, greater ability to share gifts and talents collectively with the world in a way that's healing and more beneficial. So overall, it's this full moon has intensity to it. It's got a lot of expansion. I mean, honestly, energetically, it could be uncomfortable. A lot of times the energetic changes happen first before we see external changes. And sometimes those energetic changes take months, for us to see the results, or even years before we see the results of these energetic changes. So we might be looking at a period of time where the collective is going through quite a lot of internal energetic changes, and it affects society for years and years to come. Like those external changes take time to unfold and, manifest. But this could be like a turning point, where something was going in one direction and now it's going in a different direction. But there's definitely a reset happening around this full moon. It's kind of like a change of course is kind of how I feel. Like whatever happens around this full moon, it's kind of like, oh, we were going in this direction and now we're going into this direction. Like if you were on a journey, like sometimes Jupiter can represent travel and journeys and like, risk taking and like long-term journeys, long-term travel, like long distance travel. Like if you're thinking about a spiritual journey or um, just a personal journey you're going through, like this is where a reset occurs. There could be a shift in direction. Um, there could be something exposed and illuminated that has you both heal and go through a kind of inner revolution and change. Um, Definitely see like a reset around possibilities and potentials and opportunities. Um, this might be a turning point where you choose something. Maybe there's been a lot of different opportunities, or more and more opportunities are presenting themselves, or you finally come into contact with an opportunity that kind of changes course in your life. It shifts things in your life in some way. This full moon is ruled by Saturn traditionally, and Saturn is in Aries. It is in its fall in Aries, which means it just has to work harder to carry out its energy there. And it will be turning retrograde here on July 26th, and it will be retrograde from July 26th to December 10th. And so Saturn will be retrograde. Retrograde just means that the energy is more internal. And, Saturn does deal with our karma. It deals with what we're building and, our boundaries, our responsibilities and commitments. And so when Saturn goes retrograde, it just means we're reworking some stuff. We're reworking some things internally. We're, going back over what we've already done and having to rework, rebuild, redo, realign, reassess, our commitments, our responsibilities, the structure in our lives, stuff like that, the karma that we haven't dealt with. And Saturn will be in this square here with Mercury. Mercury will be direct, it'll be squaring Saturn. And so Mercury has to do with our thoughts, our thinking, our communication, and our transit. And so when it has a square with Saturn, one of the things that come about is like the integration between having to be sensitive in the way you communicate, having to be both safe and sensitive in the way you communicate something that's kind of emotionally sensitive, and integrating that with being direct and to the point and brave and courageous and putting yourself first. And so these are two energies that are strong in leadership qualities, but approach things completely differently. Like Cancer is more indirect and passive. Aries can be more too blunt, too honest, like maybe a little too hurtful in communication. So we might be working through communicating boundaries, you know, an important time where we're having to, collectively make boundaries, legislative boundaries, laws, boundaries, um, enforcing boundaries, um, authority figures, communication with authority figures that is passive aggressive, indirectly manipulative, things like that. For us personally, you can think of it as a time when you might be really having to think about something. It could be anything from our responsibilities, our commitments, our boundaries, our emotional boundaries, how we communicate our personal desires and needs and wants and, putting ourselves first, like how we integrate that with people we care about and how we nurture and heal and care for people that we care about, like our family and our home. And so we might be, really growing and integrating around our communication in this full moon. Now, this full moon is also ruled by Uranus, which is the modern ruler. And I mentioned that Uranus is the planet of the higher mind, awakening, change, disruptions, chaos, things that are unpredictable. And so this full moon definitely could be unpredictable. When you think you know what's happening, it might not be what's happening. Usually things with Uranus just like they come out of left field. You don't see it coming. It's surprising. Um, Something that can't really be predicted, right? Uranus is in Gemini. This brings about themes of all kinds of different perspectives that everyone has, differing perspectives that we all have, listening to each other, communication, active listening, transit, media. And Uranus can bring about, themes of being unique, different, independent, chaos, revolution, awakening, things like that. And we have it trining this new moon. So this moon definitely brings about fast change, fast awakening, fast shifts. And it is also in this sextile with Neptune, our ideals, our imagination, our visions, possibly going through a change, going through a dissolving process. It's also going to be in a sextile with this Cazimi, with Jupiter and the Sun. So I, this is, I mean, honestly, when I look at this, it's just like, wow, this full moon is quite an activation. This is a collective shift in consciousness that is occurring. It is a reset that is occurring. This is kind of wild energy. And I think energetically, we could be having an ascension moment, where we are just clearing out some trauma, some collective trauma, and we are having the opportunity to develop some kind of vision, um, rebellion, revolution, and we come into more opportunities around that. We come into more expansion around, envisioning a new world and expanding that, um, with new forms of leadership or using leadership in wiser ways and really innovating communication, media, infrastructure, social media, all of that could be going through new developments and changes. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to pull some cards for this full moon. I haven't done that in a while. I used to do it and I kind of miss doing it. So I got some cards out. I'm going to be pulling some cards for the full moon to see if there's any other messages, intuitive messages that want to come through for us around this time. I've just got you on my screen, and the first card I'm going to pull is a tarot card. I'm using this deck. Oh, there we go. Yeah, the Lightseers Tarot deck. Something about this full moon, as I tune into it collectively, intuitively, is that this is kind of a moment of spiritual protection that's showing up. And with that said, I think that it can bring up themes of fear and crisis and, things falling apart, things dissolving, endings. And there can certainly be more worries and fears and anxieties in the air around this full moon. But generally, this energy itself, like on a spiritual or soul level, it's kind of like a great awakening, and it's kind of like the type of awakening that helps protect us and serve us in positive and beneficial ways. Sometimes when people go through experiences, they're going through an experience, they think they know what's happening, they think they know where things are going, and then all of a sudden something happens and it changes everything. It changes the way you see something, the way you relate to something, and there's kind of no going back, after you get some form of clarity. This kind of reminds me of one of those moments, Okay, a card came out. We have the Five of Cups. Sorry, I know my camera filter is probably annoying for some of you, but I need it on. Okay, yeah, Five of Cups. In the Five of Cups, come on now. Come on now. There we go. In this Five of Cups, there's four cups that are upright, and then there's this spilt cup here. This is like a victim mentality, that can come up around the full moon. That, out of all the things going right, out of all the things going well, there could be a tendency to focus on what isn't working or what is disappointing or what is upsetting you. This could be a message around victim mentality and where um, you're focusing on the negative. You're focusing on helplessness. What I'm what I'm sensing about this full moon is that it's a birthing moment. There could be a lot of new opportunities that are occurring at this time, but at the same time, there's endings. Whenever there's new opportunities and like a birthing of new opportunities, there that could lead to an ending. That can lead to an ending of what you need to let go of because you're stepping into more potentials or more opportunities. And what I sense about this message is that there could be a lot of different, new opportunities percolating in your life, new connections, new opportunities, new possibilities, new potentials. But then there's probably like something there that you don't like or that isn't working or that you have to let go of, that you have to end. And there could be a tendency to focus on that and be like, "Oh, but this thing that I was attached to is ending," or this thing that I wanted is ending, but there's more to see than just that. Um, so the image that I'm getting for this is kind of like if you had like your pet dog, give birth to a litter of puppies and all the puppies are new and it's so cute. And then there's like one puppy that's like a runt and it gets sick and it doesn't make it, and it's kind of like, oh no, this, sad moment of letting go of like this little cute little puppy, passed away, so there could be like a death energy around this full moon, like a death window around this full moon where things literally decompose, things literally die, things literally get purged out of your life. There's actual endings that occur. But at the same time, you still have a litter of puppies, in this example, and they're still all healthy and they're still all going to grow up and be old, and you still get to enjoy those puppies. And so it's kind of like fixating and obsessing about that one little thing that doesn't work out that you have to let go of. It's, that victim mentality around that where celebrate all the things that are good that are happening in your life. There's a focus on something that's not working. This is a card that can bring energy around grieving, disillusionment, disappointments, betrayal, bitterness, self-pity, a broken heart, wallowing in your feelings. I find it interesting because when we're looking at the astrology, we do have Juno in this opposition with Jupiter. And Juno is the planet of partnerships and marriage and can actually show us themes of betrayal, cheating, jealousy, disappointment. You know, um, it can expose something, like secrets, hidden truths in our partnerships and close relationships. And it can, expose that for the purpose of releasing it, for the purpose of letting it go, for the purpose of surrendering. And essentially, this could be an emotionally tender time. It could be easy for us to wallow in our feelings. And so let's see what else we get. The next deck that I'm pulling from is the Wisdom of the Oracle. The card that came out is Chaos and Conflict with the number 33 here. Chaos and Conflict. In this card that has a pattern of a giraffe and it's kind of falling apart, pieces are falling apart, and underneath it is the zebra. I think that's interesting with this Leo energy. Like we're showing ourselves one way, maybe we're masking ourselves as one way, but underneath is like more of our raw, authentic expression. This is about the chaos and the chaos and disruptions that we need to leave behind parts of ourselves, and patterns that aren't working for us. And so this is definitely makes sense with the full moon. Like we have this trine with Uranus. We will likely experience change, some form of disruption or even chaos in our lives, some form of awakening at this time that's going to help us leave behind and let go of parts of ourselves, masks, old identities, layers of psychic, debris that we need to release that's keeping us from our authentic expression. The next deck I'm pulling from is the Wild Unknown Archetype. Oh, the King. That's very curious because the Sun will be in Leo. Jupiter will be Cazimi with Leo. Leo can represent royalty, kings and queens. Um, so I'm wondering if there's an important figure coming up around this full moon, an important figure that acts like a king, um, that will be a part of this full moon activation. A leader, masculine energy, king, royalty. This is reminding me, like, if I was to keep this completely, like, just energetic, um, it reminds me of a death process around this energy. You can think about the king as a masculine archetype. A king is supposed to be this mature archetype of masculine energy that is in a position of authority that has to make very difficult decisions for the greatest good or for the kingdom, the rulership, and often is known for its financial security and wealth and abundance, as well as its leadership and its authority over others. And yeah, with this energy, I'm definitely seeing like a death process around this. So I'm just bringing it back to you around your own masculine energy. You could be going through a death process in your own masculine energy, especially like parts of you that played roles around management and authority and making difficult decisions and having influence over others. Like there's possibly an old, outdated version of your masculine energy that is going through a death process. I do see this as a revolutionary kind of full moon. And so, whoever, if this is externalized, there could be a figure in your life that, is in a role of authority, um, like a father figure or like a male figure, an authority figure, a boss, a family member, a friend, someone that has some form of role of authority. And this could be going through an ending, a death process, a transformation of death and rebirth. This can express in so many different ways, but I definitely see a death process related to authority and masculine energy. This full moon could be um, bring about, global news around the death of a prominent figure for sure. The next card I'm pulling here is the Threads of Fate. Okay. Shadow. Why am I not surprised? This card says shadow. It has a bat on it that goes through a transmutation. Bats are very sensitive. They have that echolocation. And it is like a prominent symbol around the subconscious or subjective patterns, the shadow side, things that are hidden and distorted, things that are coming up to the surface that haven't been seen before. I mean, yeah, this is definitely a full moon where shadow work, like being aware of parts of you that are coming up to the surface, that are shadowy, is really important around this full moon. Um, with all of these cards together, I'll get to that in just a second. I just want to tune into this card a little bit longer. It's interesting when I'm looking at a clairvoyant image for this shadow, it feels like a scene out of The Sleeping Beauty when she is gets her finger pricked by the needle and then goes into this like deep sleep, and it's like a spell comes over her and she's in a deep sleep, and then she has to wait for like a prince to come awaken her through a kiss, like love and romance. And I think there could be themes of like of awakening, and how do we awaken? Do we awaken through love and romance and creativity and, warm, connected heart, self-expression? Um, this feels like it's related to our feminine energy and where we have polarizing sides of our feminine energy, like the side of us that's almost like innocent and naive and receives support from a place of naivety. And that support ends up being damaging, manipulative, hidden, cursing kind of support. And then we have to go through this journey where, luckily, something comes along to break the curse, to break the spell, to bring us back to our original world, but in this case, a better world where love and heart and connection is involved. So I'm sensing that this is a part of like the exposure of something kind of wicked, malefic, secretive, manipulative. Something might become kind of obvious. Like an agenda, like there being an agenda that, and I'm speaking about this more collectively, like in humanity versus like personally to you. So just stay with me for a second here, and I'm talking about shadows, so things are distorted, things are hidden, things are, stuff like that. So I'm kind of sensing like something getting exposed or something like a hidden agenda gets exposed, like a form of interference is getting exposed. Someone being threatened gets exposed. Even our shadows around innocence and naivety getting exposed. And it does lead to some form of awakening experience where there's, both luck, opportunity, and like connection. When I'm putting all of these cards together, there could be a tendency to focus on our fears, our anxieties, our helplessness, our disappointments. There might be actual grief coming up around this full moon collectively, focusing on what's not working, but kind of missing out on everything that is coming together, like things that are coming together. I think there's going to be a tendency for people to whine and take pity in some of the things that are happening now, but this would be an opportunity to come out of helplessness. This is possibly part of the shadow that's occurring in the collective. is like the tendency to be helpless and disappointed and focus on losses and grief and where we're learning to be more discerning and wise and exposing of manipulation and hidden agenda. Where something around this full moon happens that disrupts a pattern, that disrupts and changes something that's occurring. It's definitely exposing, it's definitely shedding, it's definitely allowing things to fall apart. You can compare it to a tower moment, or you can compare it to a dissolving moment, or a shedding moment, or a release, or a purge moment, but it's definitely a letting go moment, um, so that, more of your authenticity and personal authority can be activated. So there is a death process around this authority energy, and this masculine energy. And that just means, this is the release that's necessary for us to shine brighter into higher levels of authority and higher levels of masculine energy. So I am seeing this as, awakening, as, coming more into your power, coming into more authentic expression, purging, releasing the shadows, the hidden things that are interfering with our um, destiny or fate or experiences and releasing them. All right, everyone, it was so good to hang out with you and to talk about all the things happening with this full moon. It is quite the full moon. And, technically, we're gearing up for eclipse season. Eclipse season is happening in August. And so the next new moon will be an eclipse and the next full moon will be an eclipse. So this is the last full moon before eclipse. So we're kind of coming into the eclipse, season after this full moon, and it's ushering in, eclipse season, which means more powerful beginnings and endings and shifts in our lives and pivots in our lives, permanent changes that occur. Um, and again, there's our collective experience that we're all going through that is very intense and transformative and bringing about lots of awakening and change in society. And then there's our personal experience, your gifts and talents right now, what's being developed so that you can shine and share it with the world so that you, your unique, special self, where do you play a part in the collective? That's something for you to focus on leading up into this full moon. Your gifts and talents, what makes you special, your light shining bright, how does that contribute to the overall collective? How can you get out of your own way and release hidden patterns that prevent you from having a sense of self-worth to shine your light into the world? Like that's exactly what this full moon is helping us with. All right. It was so good to see you. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel, please share it, comment. Give me a psychic hug. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast, leave me a comment, share it with your friends. I would love that kind of support. And if you want to work with me, if you want an astrology reading, you want to get a heads up on the eclipses and what they're activating in your chart, starting to get like a timeline on those activations and some of the themes that might be occurring in your life, some of the changes, new beginnings and endings occurring in your life. If you want to start to roll into some clarity around eclipses and what they mean for you, definitely book a session with me. I would love, love, love to look at your chart and some of the eclipses coming up for you. You can find more information in the description box below. And I wish you the very, very best. Take care, everyone. Bye.